Winning the hectic, competitive marketplace from Monday to Friday starts on Saturday and Sunday. And here in Bisnomics, in your weekend's most profitable 60 minutes, that's what we intend to do to you. I'm Tharindra Marasekara, and welcome to today's episode of Bisnomics, where we will be discussing about a very important technological concept. Now, you either adopt and adapt to the new technologies, or you get dragged on to irrelevance and obsolescence. That's the mantra for any business today. As a business decision maker, an entrepreneur, you need to know what's the latest in the technological fields that can have an impact on your business. Today, we focus on cloud computing. Do you remember the time that you had an army of people swarming your offices, coming and installing those systems one computer at a time? Well, guess what? Apparently, those days are a thing of the past. Today, we talk of a model where if you want to have a software in your company, you just have to go onto a website, subscribe, and you have the software running in your office just like that. What exactly is cloud computing, and what do you need to know about implementing those solutions into your organizations? Let's talk about that today with an expert in the cloud computing industry, Nithushan Udaykumar. Nithushan, welcome to Bisnomics.
Thank you for having me here.
Nithushan, just start off by debunking the myths to us and tell us what exactly is cloud computing, because I myself find this to be sometimes quite a bit of a dusra, because we hear about words like software as a service, we hear platform as a service. I mean, what exactly are these? But let's first start with what exactly is cloud computing.
So, cloud computing is the delivery of any IT resources in the medium of internet. So, in today's world, we use something called pay-as-you-go model, where we don't have to buy and install very expensive IT infrastructures. Instead, we access those resources required when the demand occurs from vendors like Microsoft, Azure, or AWS, or Oracle, or DigitalOcean, and we just pay for the resources that we have used. And if you take the word cloud, it has been there for some time. It has actually originated. It has its origins back in 1955, actually, where in those days they were using mainframes or servers.
Those big, bulky computers.
Exactly. So they were very expensive to install, and as well as very complex hardware equipment. So in those days, only the big companies which had the financial might had to install it. Others, they couldn't use it at all.
What you're saying is, forget the software. First, you had to dump a thumping amount on the machines
itself. So back then, it was a privilege to have a mainframe. So and back then, what happened was the father or the person who came up with this term, artificial intelligence, Mac McCarthy. So he also theorized the usage of, or sharing the usage, of computing usage with the shared users. So that actually, I think, when the cloud actually originated. And then in 1970s, IBM came up with this operating system called VM, which actually became the foundation stone for the cloud which we are enjoying in this today's world. And after that, in 2006, when AWS, Amazon Web Services, when they came up with Elasticsearch 2, what they did was they were renting out their computing power as well as their applications which they have developed on a rental basis to other third-party vendors. So with that, cloud became a big thing what we are seeing today. And also when it comes to dimensions what we are talking of.
Correct. Platform as a service,
yes,
software as a service. Some even talk about power as a service.
Yes, so I think, but main three dimensions I would say is infrastructure as a service. That's where the business, that is the basic stack, where the basic bandwidth, the computing power, and also the storage relies on. That is the basic. So that basically, if you are giving just the hardware or something like that, it goes as infrastructure as a service. Then you have the platform as a service, which it actually sits on top of the infrastructure as a service, where they actually, the developers, they use back-end systems such as database applications, web services, such to host. And then you have something called software as a service, which actually sits on top of all that. So those are the services consumers like most of the consumers will be looking at, such as it could be Gmail, Netflix, or ERP services, or it could be any kind of solution which a normal consumer looks at. Understood. So that is what software as a service and the difference between the platforms are.
So let me get this right. Now, if I'm using my email, where I log on to a website, I check my email, that's also a part of cloud, isn't it? Because my email is not really physically on my phone, I'm accessing it through the internet. And today, not only personal things like email or my social media profile, I mean, people talk about Facebook, Instagram, etc. Even that is somewhat of cloud computing, because you are accessing it on that company's particular systems through the internet connections.
Exactly.
And today what we are saying is not only for personal things like that, but also we are looking at using this concept for maybe having an accounting system for your company, maybe having a particular sales management system for your company. You access all that online. I think you definitely set the right tone there and the right start, Nitushan. Now, for a business, somebody who is watching this show, who is like thinking, okay, well, we have a accounting system where it's installed in about 10, 20 different machines in my company. Every time there is a change, somebody has to come and do the changes in about 10, 20 machines. And you always realize when you have 10, 20 machines, after a day or two, you realize, okay, there is always that machine that someone has missed. But what you are saying is, no, when you have a cloud system, it's just a matter of accessing the software through the internet. So you do the change in one place, and after that, you have the latest version available. Exactly. So what are the benefits for a business that you get by adopting cloud solutions?
Depending on the organization type, the industry, and various factors, it differs. But already I would think most of the companies in one way or another, they'll be already using some kind of cloud solution. It could be email hosted. So it's basically a cloud, like you correctly said previously, and also like an accounting solution. So they're already using those kind of applications, even though they don't realize they are using a cloud-based solution. On top of that, what also happens is companies also use them for, keep their data backups, disaster recovery, even to do advanced analytics and things like that. And also, but in these days, larger corporations, if I can give some examples, for example, healthcare industry. Healthcare industry actually uses the cloud computing power to give personalized medication for every single patient. That would not be possible if we had, individual computers running. So for these, you need supercomputers, and the amount of computing needed is a lot. And also, if I can give some more examples, let's say gaming. Because of the power of cloud, basically, if you can imagine thousands or even millions of players all around the world, globe, they can play instantly.
They log in and play at once.
The same game at once.
Correct.
That's not possible if we had a normal PC. We need cloud power for that.
Correct.
Not only that, when it comes to financial institutions, in order for them to process or detect frauds, you need cloud power or an AI running in there to detect those frauds. So I think that's why we need it. And on top of that, if you give
also, let me just interpret that. We also see there are projects where, like, especially not-for-profit projects, where they say when you sleep, you can sign up your mobile phone to contribute to some of the researching and processing of some of the research data for some of these illnesses and diseases and all that. So sometimes you see, even in that way, cloud has become a part of everyday life of individuals and some institutes as well. But specifically, I'm coming back to that question from a business viewpoint. For example, let's say someone who is running a store, who is now wondering, okay, maybe my sales and accounting system, I should move to a cloud. What benefits are we looking at? Is it scalability? Is it lesser in cost? What benefits are we looking at?
Actually, whatever you mentioned, all of them basically. So the initially I would say is the investment. So if he's going to have his own server, he'll be putting a couple of millions rupees advance. Not only that, he has to have an IT guy sitting there, making sure, the security is up, security is there, and our system is running, because technology, it can go wrong anytime. So there should be always someone, and there should be always someone, maintaining it. So if you go for a cloud-based solution, basically there's no big, large investment which you have to put in. Just sign up, couple of $100, you can just basically sign up.
Correct.
And basically
because the cloud solution provider has the economies of scale through the other participants of that solution as well.
Yes.
Whereas if I buy a machine only for my company or a software specifically on a machine on my company with the servers and all that, then I have to incur that entire cost. Makes a lot of economic sense.
Exactly. And also you won't be using the whole capacity of what is meant for. Over here, you just use for what the capacity what you are using. Understood. And when an additional capacity needed, you can basically scale it. Yes. And when it's not needed, you can scale down as well.
And let me get this right. When the solution creator or the developer updates the solution with the modified version, the business who is using that software automatically has the new version. It's like, for example, if Facebook or Instagram if they adds in a new feature, us as users, we will automatically have access to that feature from the very next second.
Yes. So like you correctly said, software, that is the advantage of having a software as a service. So software as a service, in order for it to take place, cloud was the initial stone which needed to achieve that software as a service.
Noted, Nithushan. Yeah. Let's talk about the potential for this industry. Now, a few years ago, this was somewhere around $300 billion, but globally, over the next few years, this is set to skyrocket because the pandemic came in, more people at home, they needed the cloud to collaborate. Forget all this. Companies were having their people uploading the files into a common folder somewhere on the internet, and then they go and access it. All this is cloud, isn't it? So I believe the pandemic kind of made sure the world understood the importance of cloud. Do you agree?
Yes, actually, 100%. Because like what Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella said, actually, as soon as the pandemic happened, within 2 months, there was actually 2 years of digital disruption happened in 2 months, right? So that basically shows the gravity of the digital transformation which has happened as soon as the pandemic started. Not only that, like you said, depending on the market research you listen to or subscribe to, right now that whole cloud marketplace, it's worth around somewhere around $350 billion. And in the next 5 years, it's supposed to reach $800 to $1 trillion.
Correct.
That is a big money. And so as you can see, there's a lot of opportunities out there as well.
So there is a very big potential in this industry, and even in Sri Lanka, do you see a rising adoption of cloud into companies? Are they realizing the potential it has?
Actually, more and more actually. So all this time, when you say cloud, a lot of smaller companies, so they don't like to put their applications or put their data in somewhere they can't physically see.
Maybe you have also experienced where people ask, what on earth is that about?
But yeah, exactly. So that is something they're hard to believe. And they basically, if they are storing something, they want to see that PC visually there.
Correct.
So right now, because of the cloud, when we actually explain them the importance of having it on cloud, the security benefits and all the benefits which it brings along with it, right now I see a trend, a small change in trend or the concept, how they preview it. And also, another thing is in the larger corporations primarily, most of the IT guys, they kind of hate cloud solutions because they think, okay, if they move to cloud, their importance won't be there anymore.
Correct.
So all that mindset is slowly changing because they also realize, okay, these are the solutions they should be adapting, and also they should be also learning from it.
They're realizing that this is the future.
This is the future, like it or not.
We're going to come back to that in a bit, Nithushan. We know all what is right about cloud, but what can go wrong with cloud? What are the risks that you need to be ready for before you invest? Let's talk about that after this short break. This is Bisnomics. Welcome back to Bisnomics, your weekend's most profitable 60 minutes. Our focus today is on the cloud computing industry, the business potential this industry has, and what you need to know, maybe as a business decision maker or as an investor, about the industry, the way forward. And to talk about this, we have an expert in this field joining us, who is Nithushan Udayakumar. Nithushan, now let's talk about the risks of going cloud, because when you say cloud, invariably you're talking about the internet. And you and I, there's one thing we can agree, the internet is not the safest place one could be thinking of. So what are the risks that companies are facing when they migrate to the cloud? And let's be very honest here. Rather than having everything in a physical computer, when I try to access something, let's say my files, when I try to save it over the internet, am I not putting myself in a bigger risk, number one? And number two, what about the internet connectivity bill? Who's footing that?
Okay. So anytime you store an data on the internet, you will be facing some kind of cybersecurity threat. But it becomes more problematic, especially with the clouds, like you correctly said. But to counter that only, most of the cloud solution providers, such as Microsoft or AWS, they technically spend billions of dollars into make sure that these vulnerabilities are detected, and they have patches for that.
And I believe there are, I would say, a plethora of security mechanisms and authentication mechanisms as well, isn't it?
Definitely, because more and more, as soon as more and more cloud adoption, more and more companies adapt cloud, I think with that, what also increases is the organized crime syndicates, or the people who try to hack it.
And Nithushan, we are looking at a world where globally hackers get together and they do these hacker festivals and hackathons, and millions of institutions around the world get hacked and financial information is getting stolen. So increasingly people are worried, if I store my information on the cloud, or if I process payments via a cloud, am I not facing a bigger risk?
Actually, there are two sides to every coin, right? So even though your data is getting exposed to hackers and all that, like I earlier said, because of the investments, I think it's being made harder to hack. I don't think anyone can come and claim that their product is, or their platform is cannot be hacked. It can be only made more harder to hack.
Correct.
Right.
Even the most safest encryption, like let's say a 128-bit or 256-bit, is still can be hacked, but the probability is increasingly less.
Yes, and more computing power, supercomputers being used, government sponsored, they can do all sort of things. So no one can claim it, like I previously said. And also, going back to your previous question, what you said, how do you convince them? So typical user, if you look at him, if he says, by keeping it on-prem, isolated from the internet, it's more safer. Of course, it's safer, but what will happen if you have a fire accident? You're going to end up losing all that data.
Or a flood.
Or even a purposely planned internal sabotage or something like that.
Nithushan, let's forget all those. The police or the authorities announce that your office from tomorrow is in a lockdown for 3-4 weeks.
Yep.
You have absolutely no access.
So if you're on cloud, basically you can access the product from any part of the world.
Anytime, anywhere.
As long as you have internet, you can use it. Right? So those are the advantages what it brings. And also the security side. A lot of not only security, the computing power, the scalability.
Correct.
So I think all those advantages will outweigh the risks what is involved.
Understood.
So that mindset is slowly changing. So that's why you see a lot of adaptation in the cloud platform, especially in the Fortune 500 companies.
Yes.
So what I tell them is, okay, if the Fortune 500 companies are adapting it, why not you?
Correct.
So there's a big shift.
Nithushan, is this also the opportunity of, I would say, a century for Sri Lankan IT entrepreneurs, Sri Lankan software entrepreneurs, where earlier, if you are a small-scale software developer, you don't have the resources to, go to foreign countries, travel, and then install systems into those foreign clients, and whenever there's a problem, to fly to those countries, attend to it. If you didn't have the resources, you never made it global. Today, thanks to the cloud system, you can, if you develop a good enough software product, any foreign client can actually pay over the internet and get access to your software and start using it. So is this not the opportunity of Sri Lankan IT and software entrepreneurs to start making their solutions available to any country at any time?
Yes, actually they should. And there are a couple of segments where I see that there will be a lot of growth in the coming decade. To start with, like what we spoke earlier, software as a service, enterprise products, right? I see a lot of adaptation happening in that segment. And also, when it comes to artificial intelligence as a service, earlier if you want to use the power of AI, you had to spend millions of dollars just into R&D and configure and develop and all that.
Correct.
Right now, even an individual or a smaller company, they can use the advantages of it by just subscribing to it.
There are a lot of top companies in the world that have developed various studios, AI studios, where you can access it, build your own AI engine and start using.
Exactly. And also the next big thing would be, I think, is game streaming. What has happened to songs with Spotify and what has happened to movies with Netflix, the same thing is going to happen for games as well. On-demand streaming games. So Google to Microsoft to PlayStation, they're also investing in billions of dollars. Going back to, again, the previous topic that I spoke about, cybersecurity. So because the cloud segment is growing big time,
Yes.
a lot of cyber fraudsters, they are also starting, trying to see the vulnerabilities in the product. So that is going to increase the demand for cyber security experts as well.
Correct.
So for the next decade, definitely there'll be a lot of opportunities coming up. That's where I think countries like Israel is betting on. There's a lot of startups or tools which are being developed in Israel, which are being acquired by billion-dollar companies like Microsoft and all. So if Israel can do it, definitely Sri Lanka can also do it.
We have the talent, we have the capabilities and the capacity. It's just a matter of realizing that economic opportunity and really setting the focus right. I like how you highlight some of those opportunities, the economic opportunities as well, Nitushan. Now, let's talk about the pandemic. We had a chat on this earlier as well, but the pandemic, did it create that right impetus or the push towards adopting cloud solutions globally? What is your experience? And also, from the vendor side, you might have seen sometimes the demand increasing from some of the potential marketplace members as well, where earlier they were shunning the cloud, but now they want to get on the train.
Yes. Like you correctly said, before, companies, when it comes to cloud or any kind of computer solutions, they actually thought of it as a cost. Right now, more and more of them are realizing, it's a necessary investment which is needed in order for the company to be stable as well as to grow. Even during a pandemic like situation, if you were to work from home, unless you are online, you can't basically work. So I have friends, who are operating, they have operations in Sri Lanka, but whereas, all the admin to everything is done in Australia. So I don't think if it wasn't for the cloud, they wouldn't be able to do it. Not only that, like I said earlier, Microsoft CEO said 2 years of disruption happened in 2 months. Even locally, if you look at it, the e-auctioning digitalization project.
Correct.
It has been there for 2 decades almost. But because of pandemic, it happened in weeks.
Even our stock exchange.
Exactly. So those are the disruptions which has happened in the last year.
And Nitushan, correct me if I'm wrong. Now, we saw where people could sign up with the stock exchange directly from home, scan some documents, and I believe all this is also happening in the cloud.
Yes, it is. So that, I think you are referring to retail stock market.
Correct.
So that is basically empowering every single individual to become a stock trader.
Correct.
So even that, in a way, unless if there's internet, in the mobile app, you wouldn't be able to do it, because in those days, I'm sure you would know, in the stock market, in the flow, they have to keep on shouting, I'm buying this stock, that and all. With the cloud, basically with an app, you can do that. And also, I would like to highlight that, even our company, I would say, just to give a scale of the demand going up, our number of inquiries which came in, it was almost 500% growth. And also, as a company, we actually grew 250%. So that, I think, if we are a small company in Sri Lanka, okay, and if we can grow that much, I can't even assume the big giants, how much of money they would have made.
So nice to hear the opportunity being exploited well and making use of, because end of the day, small or large, all organizations need to exploit the opportunities that are there in the economy, and that's the way the overall national economy will grow as well. So kudos and well done on that.
Thank you.
Do you see a drive even among the state sector, like state organizations, towards adopting cloud? Because normally we say state organizations are very traditional minded and that they are a little laid back when it comes to adopting technology. How is your experience? Have you had any experience in dealing with the state sector with regard to cloud adoption? And where do you see the cloud within the state institutions?
So when it comes to state institution, we are actually, we have a couple of clients as well, so excise department, postgraduate department, couple of other government sectors. And when it comes to state, it has been fairly small, but right now, after pandemic especially, I see a lot of increase in adaptation. And also another good thing what I've seen is the current, how things are heading. Government also is pushing to digitize almost all whatever the operations they can digitize, they are also digitizing it, which is a good call. And also preferably Sri Lankan products are preferred in that, right? Which is a good move, I would say. On top of that, to increase... So
when you say Sri Lankan products are preferred, they are giving preference to the
Sri Lankan products.
Sri Lankan products solution.
First.
But we also hear about certain government projects being given to various other companies from foreign countries. What do you say to that?
So I have a bit of a mixed feeling about that. You might know Sri Lanka has the capacity as well as talent pool to develop any product. Sri Lanka is basically outsourcing place for Fortune 500 companies. Of course, we can develop very complicated products. Even London Stock Exchange is running on Sri Lankan products. But the issue is Sri Lanka is a small country and we have limited resources, right? So I don't think we can bet in all the areas. So we should be focused, laser focused on the segments which we are very good at.
I like the word laser focus. That means extreme focus on what we want to provide. Like you were saying, how about Israel having a very razor sharp focus and a laser focus towards the security solutions.
Like that. So, but that will also take some time to figure out, where you're going to focus and all. So, like answering to what you asked, I don't think we should be developing every single product, but if we can develop something locally and if we think we can sell it to other countries, I think we should be doing that in Sri Lanka as well. So that is where I would think. Yeah.
And we also see that especially when certain state sector departments, they want paper-based receipts or they would want certain printed documents, etc. In a setup like this, where do you see the cloud coming in? Because when the cloud solutions come in, it's mostly paperless. So do you see that as a barrier or a hindrance in certain segments?
So I think there's a culture change which is needed. So
that will take some time.
It will take some time, but I think we are heading in the right direction. It's not going to happen overnight. So when you properly introduce digital solutions like this on cloud or whatever, I think we can basically go 100% paperless. That is possible.
What about the potential of cloud computing for, I would say, for an IT entrepreneur, someone who is having his own business, or let's say a young student who is planning to start his own IT solution company? Shouldn't they be looking at cloud as the way forward? Because as you are very correctly saying, there's so much potential in the future, everything is going to the cloud. But if you are going to be focused on making, let's say, standalone solutions, you're probably going to be left behind in the race. Am I right?
Yes. So actually for entrepreneurs, I would prefer, or they should develop products which is scalable. So if they are scalable, of course, it has to be on cloud as well. So like I previously said, since the segment is growing, definitely they can. And also Sri Lanka, basically, they can use Sri Lanka as a test market. So they can prove themselves over here and then do the necessary investment raise and make the right contacts, and they can basically sell it internationally.
Do you think Sri Lankan, the business solutions market is diverse enough to be a test market for global platforms later on?
I do think it's not diverse enough, but in particular segments, I think Sri Lanka can be a test market. Actually, a lot of Fortune 500 companies or the larger companies which are developing products for their market, before they roll it out there, they actually test it in Sri Lanka.
Oh, really?
Even if you take telcos, before they roll out 4G in other countries, they were using Sri Lanka as a test market. After they started rolling in other countries. So it is actually, even for us in our company, we do that as well. Before we test anything with other countries, we test it out in our market and then we roll it out in international markets as well.
Some interesting insights there from the cloud sector. What government policy decisions do we need to strengthen the tech entrepreneurs of Sri Lanka? And for any young student who plans to enter the cloud solutions industry, what skills do you need to develop? Let's talk about that on the other side of the short break. This is Bisnomics. Welcome back to Bisnomics. We are in conversation with Nithushan Utekuma regarding the cloud services industry of Sri Lanka and worldwide, the potential, the way forward, and the pitfalls to avoid. Nithushan, let's talk about government policy. Now, is there a proper politically independent government policy for supporting the tech entrepreneurs of Sri Lanka? You're a tech entrepreneur, you're in the forefront, you see how things are happening. Is there a proper policy?
Fortunate enough, we don't have one, but we are heading in the right direction, I would say. So if you basically look at the last 10 years, the last decade, how the startup ecosystem has evolved or the technology ecosystem has evolved in Sri Lanka, because of the support from the government as well as private segment, we had a lot of hackathons, acceleration programs, angel investing events, incubation events. Because of that, I see there is a growth in startup ecosystem. But of course, there's a lot of space for us to grow. Even though there's a lot of angel investing or seed funding available, plenty, what Sri Lanka is still lagging behind is venture in the next level of investment. which is VC investments or private equity investments. But in order for that to bring into Sri Lanka, what we also need is reforms in the government level, such as, if an investor puts in his money, he should be able to withdraw that money anytime he needs. And also, of course, there are a lot of skill gaps in Sri Lanka and technology development. So there are certain skill gaps which we don't have any person in Sri Lanka.
What are these skill gaps?
So when it comes to my company, we are struggling to actually find qualified cloud database architects, right? So if we were to hire someone, we had to hire them from India or from Singapore.
So what you're saying is, even the ones who are in Sri Lanka, they are probably already employed and they are very much in demand.
Highly in demand. So to counter those kind of things, I think we should have policies like what they were trying to do earlier, like ETCA, where they basically gave for qualified people jobs in Sri Lanka. That is necessary if we were to grow as a country. Not only that, in Sri Lanka, the demand what we have for IT segment, we don't have enough people or students graduating enough to meet that demand as well. So unless we increase the demand, increase the output, or we had to bring some people from abroad as well. But I think bringing people from abroad is gonna help us in many ways, because it's gonna bring those networks with them as well, and also the expertise that they have in those big markets.
Understood. Now let's talk about when we are migrating to the cloud. Now I believe this is the tough part, because talking about the cloud benefits sounds all nice, and a very nice picture is painted to the investor or the client, and they are willing to put the money down. They're like, okay, let's go cloud. But we hear a lot of complaints that when people try to migrate to the cloud, not only cloud, I believe for any new IT solution, when they migrate, that migration process is very painstaking. In your experience, what are the common pitfalls to avoid when they are migrating to the cloud?
The first one I would say is not having a digital first or cloud first mentality or strategy within the company. Because normally when there's a changeover like this, normally this decision is done by the top management or the IT director or whoever that is. But the people who are going to use it day to end, or the people who are actually going to implement it, are the people who are in the ground level. So basically, before you start implementing it, basically we should also educate them on the advantages, what it will bring to them individually as well as the company. So it will be very easier for them to understand, because otherwise what they will go is they'll go to a very negative mode, because anywhere in any part of the world, this is basically a culture change, right? So it will be very hard. So it will put them into a negative mode, which is going to affect the implementation of the solution as well. Not only that, companies should also focus is giving sufficient time as well as doing the costing correctly, because what will happen is if they rush into something, the costing won't be done. The scope of work, the actual supplier might underestimate it, or we might even overestimate it as well in certain cases.
Correct.
And then when you crush them for timelines, sometimes it's like there's a saying, you can't give a birth by pressuring someone in 2 months or 3 months. The same goes to IT products as well, because certain cases, just to understand the scope of it will take months. So we can't basically turn up one day and say, okay, within a month I need a system installed. That is not a good way forward. So they should always take their time as well, not to rush on it.
And sometimes we hear the complaint that it's too expensive to shift to cloud. That's probably because they are trying to look at cloud as a buffet and say, okay, we want all these features, how much? Instead, as you very correctly said, I believe, study your company, see what is needed, and then go for the solution that you need, not just what somebody else is saying, but the solution that you need.
Yeah, like some of the solutions which might be available, it might be expensive, and also there might be some features which you don't need, right? And sometimes there will be some features which you need. So I believe there's no monopoly in Sri Lanka, right? So there's a lot of suppliers here. So I think they should spend some extra time, and when it comes to evaluating the correct suppliers.
The market dynamics are working in the favor of the
businesses. Not only that, and also when it comes to changeovers, they should also look at the securities as well, because what happens most of the times is sometimes when they go for a changeover, there might be some couple of students who have developed a product, and then whereas they'll be competing against a product which has millions of dollars of investments has gone.
Correct.
So the customer, he'll think of it, okay, it's both the same product, the output is same, but what they don't visualize is the security aspects of it.
Correct.
And also the continuity of the company. Sometimes as soon as he gets a foreign visa, he might go, or something might happen. So they should also evaluate the continuity of the company, not just going for the price. That's something they should actually take into mind, I would say.
And what exactly is a cloud strategy? Because we've read almost over and over in so many reports that companies need to have a proper cloud strategy. Now, corporate strategy, yes, we know. Marketing strategy, we know. IT strategy also we know. Nithushan, what's a cloud strategy?
I think cloud strategy is actually a part of the IT strategy, because moving to cloud is not an easy thing, right? Because basically, when it comes to large organizations, they can have, products, hundreds of products, or even thousands of products, which has been developed over the decades of time. So for them they can't just simply change into cloud. So they should have a long-term vision when what they're going to change. Even some of the solutions they might be using, it won't be relevant anymore. So they should look at all those aspects, and they should always have a long-term aspect, because once you go on cloud, updating to maintaining everything becomes much more simpler than older products. So, yeah.
On a final note, Nithushan, let's talk about skills needed by cloud solution developers, because there are so many young students who want to get into the cloud market space. There is potential, as you said. The world is looking at going cloud. Sri Lanka has a great opportunity to specialize and add some value in that domain. But if somebody wants to start providing their own cloud-based solution, what specific skills do they need?
More than a specific cloud-related qualification, what I would say is, unlike previous decades, whatever the certifications or whatever the knowledge you need to learn, it's available online for free most of the cases. In the shortcut diplomas, degrees even, you can do all of them online. But most of the technology entrepreneurs in Sri Lanka, what they lack is the operational as well as the management skills, as well as the communication, the communication expertise, or I would say communication skill.
The soft skills.
Soft skills to pitch that product to the customer or even the investors. What they do is end up doing is they build thousands of products, but each with one customers. What I always tell anyone is, build one product, sell it 1,000 times, instead of building 1,000 products with one customer each.
And with cloud solutions,
it's
when you sell one product to 1,000 customers, the economics of scale kick in,
exactly.
And the cost becomes even more lesser and cost effective.
Like you correctly said, yes.
Nithushan, in terms of starting to promote via the cloud, starting to promote the cloud solutions to a particular business, when they're approaching, if someone is not convinced about cloud, what should they tell them? I believe this is a very common problem for a lot of young entrepreneurs when they try to speak to a company and say, look, we have a solution, it's on the cloud. If they don't believe in the cloud still, I'm sure you face this enough and more, where they don't believe in cloud, how do you convince them, no, cloud is the future?
What we typically do is basically we have a comparison chart. It basically outlines the difference between cloud and on-prem solution is, and the advantages what they will have. So if I can pull some examples out of it, like I earlier said, updating and maintaining the systems. If they were to go on always the latest updated version of the product, right, they should be on cloud, because on cloud, for me, I can update thousands of companies within seconds actually. And also the securities, because every week there's a lot of new vulnerabilities which are being discovered. So in order for us to patch it, if it's on cloud, it's much more easy to patch it. If you're on-prem, basically we had to manually log in or manually push an update and check if it is working and all that. So I think going on cloud, I think even though in the long term they might think it's expensive, but there's another point as well. If you go for an on-prem solution instead of a cloud, what will also happen is, what they don't think
on-prem
of
as in on-site.
On-site
yes.
From a solution. What they don't also think is, okay, let's say we are putting around 2 million rupees into a server, right? That will become obsolete in the next...
Correct. It's depreciation from there onwards.
5 years, it will depreciate. Then they have to invest again.
Correct.
That is something they don't think of all the time.
Yes.
Because they think, okay, by going on cloud, there might be a difference of, it might only cost 3 years worth of expense. But still, reinstalling, risking all that, you don't know when the server is going to break down.
Correct.
That, they don't put the risk into the play as well.
Understood.
So they should do all that as well.
Nithushan, I'm going to throw this one very common question that people might ask. Okay, I go for cloud, it's internet based. What if my internet breaks down, or what if I don't have net access? I believe the answer is most of the cloud solutions come with partly local as well, where it kicks in and it kind of takes over the operations until the internet connection is back. Am I right?
Yes, you correctly said. What companies also do is they look at certain business critical applications. So those kind of applications, what they do is they make sure even offline it works.
The mission critical ones.
Mission critical ones. For an example, let's take a retail outlet.
Yeah.
Let's say it's running on cloud, but the front end
the
sales part,
the billing and all is mission critical.
Mission critical application. Just because internet is not there, we can't tell the customer, okay, we can't give
Sorry, the cash counter is not opening. We can't say that.
We can't say that. So most of the places, what happens is it can run online. Offline.
Yes.
And then when the internet is back, it syncs and it updates it.
All right.
Right. So even it's the same thing is done by the sales rep as well. The sales reps who are running around, they'll be certain times going to places where where they don't have any internet connection at all.
Yes.
Still doesn't mean they should be still invoicing them.
So the fail-safe mechanisms are built in to the cloud solutions.
Definitely, it is needed.
Okay, Mithushan, thank you very much for taking your time and enlightening us on this very important aspect of digital transformation, which is cloud computing, because as you said, it is the future. A lot of the storage, processing, the softwares, the platforms are running via the internet, and for most businesses, it's not a matter of if, but a matter of when they adopt digital and adapt to it. Wish you and your organization good luck to grow even further, and may you be also able to win more clients globally and take the name of Sri Lankan made software to the world market in a stronger manner. Wish you all the best on behalf of Team TV1.
Thank you, Tarun, for having me here.
And with that, we wrap up today's episode of Bisnomics. This is your weekend's most profitable 60 minutes. No matter what industry you may be in, make sure that you have a strong cloud strategy to ensure the success of your operations tomorrow. I'll see you with the next episode.